Mr. Chairman, members, HCR 2001 stipulates that the state of Arizona claims sovereignty under the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution over all powers not otherwise enumerated and grants it to the federal government or reserved to the people by the Constitution. The bill further states that this resolution serves both as a notice and a demand to the federal government to immediately cease and desist mandates that are beyond the scope of these constitutionally delegated powers. The resolution demands that all compulsory federal legislation that directs states to comply under threat of civil penalties or sanctions, or requires states to pass legislation or otherwise lose federal funding, be prohibited or repealed. Finally, the bill outlines who should receive a copy of this resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Thank you. Representative Burgess from the mighty 4th District.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, committee members. I would like to thank you for hearing this bill again this year. Last year we heard this bill in this committee, and it passed out of the committee 6-8. It passed on the floor 34-24. It was held up in the Senate, so we're going to try it again this year. You know, for years now, our federal government has been reaching down into state rights. This hasn't been just 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's been a total of hundreds of years that they have been reaching down, ever since we became the United States of America. And, you know, ever so often we feel that it's necessary to tell our government at the congressional level that we are a sovereign state and that they are coming down and they are usurping our rights as a state of Arizona, that we are a sovereign state. You know, today our message is clear. It starts with the words, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution is prohibited by the states or revered to the states, respectively, or to the people. The powers delegated by the Constitution to the federal government are few and defined, and those which are to remain in the state government are numerous and infinite." So with that, I would be more than happy to answer any questions. You know, I do feel that such things as Real ID, the Patriot Act, No Child Left Behind, and those things have came down, and they have put unfunded mandates on us, and with the Patriot Act, it really, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, it overreached in that area. So if there's any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Representative Burgess. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Burgess. Question for you. When we're talking about the federal government overstepping its bounds with the states, the rights of states, what would you say in terms of the state government overstepping its rights with local governments? We've done many things over the past year that I think are way outside the bounds of our jurisdiction, including prohibiting cities from even enacting new zoning code changes. So would you be willing to send a postcard to ourselves to say we should follow the rules as well?
Maybe cities, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chad Campbell, I would say that maybe what the towns and cities and the counties need to do is to send us a postcard and tell us that we have overstepped our rights. You know, so many times when you're down here in the legislature, what happens is that you have people come to you and they are not happy what's happening at the local level, so they come to the next level up to try to solve their issues rather than to try to work them out down at that level. And so because they're not worked out at that level, then it comes up to the next level, to the county or to the state to deal with those issues. And we don't necessarily like to do the things that we do, but it seems like that it's the things that we have to do to resolve issues.
Mr. Chairman, to that point.
Excuse me 1 second. I think we had to that point.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman, and to Mr. Campbell's point, and I know Mr. Campbell and I have talked about this before. There's a distinct difference between the cities and the counties and their relationship to the state versus the state's relationship to the federal government. Cities and counties are subsidiaries of state government. It outlines it clearly in the Arizona Constitution. So they only receive the powers and the duties and the things that they do through the authority of the state government, that we, as a legislature, as a governing body, give to them to do. The difference between that and the relationship of the state and the federal government, we as a state also give the power to the federal government, that which they do. And I believe Mrs. Burgess is trying to have the federal government be reminded of that through clarification, reminding them that it's the states collectively that give the power to the federal government. And same relationship with us to the cities and the counties.
To that point,
To that point, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add, and to Representative Campbell, we're talking about the 10th Amendment. If you could show me an amendment that shows sovereignty of the cities and towns and counties, that gives the ability to them, for them to write a postcard to the state, then that'd be a different discussion. But I see no bearing in trying to assimilate these two.
To that point, as a matter of fact, it's a city charter where the state, quite frankly, says you are not a subsidiary of the state of Arizona, but you govern in and of and by yourself. You create your own ordinances. You generate your own taxes. For instance, Tempe can have a tax on food. It does, where the state doesn't. And then we turned around and, by their authority, took away funds from their account. So I just want you to just the same as a matter of fact, they have a charter to govern.
Mr. Chairman, what I'm trying to say is that this is the 10th Amendment. This is the Constitution of the United States. And that is what Representative Burgess is referring to. The sovereignty that is given to the people of each state under and protected under the 10th Amendment. The direct language is what we're going to hear. And I think we have to be careful not to veer away trying to assimilate it to something that's not protected under the Constitution of the United States.
okay. Let me bring it back to Mr. Campbell because I think he had a lot of to that points, but he wanted to kind of respond himself, I think.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you. I want to point out, and I'll let this debate continue as I look something up too.
Oh, am I interrupting you?
Answer a question now that was just brought up. But I do want to point out the intention of my statement was somewhat, I don't want to say facetious, but the point was I was trying to make a point that I think we need to look at ourselves in the mirror before we talk about other governments overstepping their bounds. We have impeded on the rights of cities and towns, counties and others for far too long in the state to do business as they think is best for their own needs and their own constituencies again, and vastly overstepped our bounds last session in many fronts. So I think if we're going to talk about what the federal government is doing and the concern there, I think we should examine our own habits and maybe reform some of our practices in-house as well. So,
Mr. Gowdy.
Double 2 points, right? To the point with your statement, in that manner, shouldn't the cities follow state law?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gowan, absolutely, except for when the state, by its charter to the city, gives the city the sole power to govern themselves, absent of state law.
But, okay, absent of state law.
In other words, you have your own planning ordinances. The state doesn't dictate that. You've got your own speed limits, and you can choose whether or not to tax food.
Okay, and then to get back to the point with the federal government, what we were just discussing, what Representative Nichols was discussing there, when the Founding Fathers put this together, they created a system that the state was the local entity. The state itself is everything. The state, together as 50, create the federal government. And the cities don't, as a conglomerate, create the state. There is no federal government without the states, and we know that. Now, within the state itself, that's what makes the cities and counties subordinate to the state, because they don't have anything within our Constitution that dictates. They're the ones that have that create the state itself. So that's the separation that you have of those two powers. That's why the state is the whole. We are the local government. That's what our Founding Fathers put together, and that's what they wanted. So we're not 3,000 miles away. You and I know everybody up here, we go to our hometowns, we go to our whole district, and we talk with people right down the streets. I know people have come to my house and we've talked, and neighbors and such. So it's a lot different than when you're 3,000 miles away than when you're local here and you're looking to protect liberties for the citizens of this great state. And that's why I see this is a great thing that I think Representative Burgess is bringing forth, so we can tell the federal government that we recognize that. Thanks.
You were the